Hi guys, Zach here. Before I start this video, I wanted to address certain things that are going on right now. Black Lives Matter. Full stop. People of color are being unfairly treated and outright murdered day in and day out in America, and it needs to stop. I'm going to link some resources below. I'm going to link the website for Black Lives Matter. I'm going to leave links to petitions you can sign. I'm going to leave links to videos that you can play where the AdSense is being donated to Black Lives Matter. I'm going to put playlists of Black Booktubers, and I'm also going to link any channels of Black Booktubers that I know that weren't included in that playlist. Nothing changes until we all do our part, so please consider joining your local protest or checking out those resources I listed below, and just make sure you're speaking up about this if you haven't already. How do I do this? I think the line is, hello everyone, my name is Zach, welcome back to my channel. It's been like 2 months since I put out a video. I'm killing it. But I think I have a fun one for you today that I think you will very much enjoy. It's a video that I've been slowly working on for a while, and that is reading my BookTube friends' guilty pleasure books. Now, before I even get into what books I read and for who I read them for and yada yada yada, we gotta have a little pre-discussion about guilty pleasures and the term guilty pleasure. Because I'd heard and used this word a lot, but somehow when I got to BookTube, suddenly anytime I've used that word, people have like given me kind of a speech. So I just want to kind of clarify what I mean. When I say guilty pleasure, I don't mean like you actively feel guilt and you're crying yourself to sleep because how can I like this book? My definition of guilty pleasure has always just kind of been something that you like even though you know it has problems or even that it's not very good. A great example of this, my own personal guilty pleasure, if you think I should expose myself, is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Yeah, you can tear that book apart a lot of the time. It is basically 80s reference, the book! Plus, you know, the main character's not that great. He's definitely got nice guy syndrome. I can totally see why someone doesn't love it, and, like, that's fine. But I do love it, even though I acknowledge that it has problems, partially because I read it when I was 14, and highly identify with the main character. We all live and we grow, so please don't judge 14-year-old me. So yeah, just knowing going here, like, I'm not expecting anyone to be, like, you know, super ashamed of their guilty pleasure. It's just kind of a good shorthand for, I enjoy this thing, but I know it has problems and or it's not that great. It's chill, guys. It's really chill. Also, I'm reviewing these based on my own enjoyment and everything. I'm also going to talk about if I can see why or what particular thing makes this a guilty pleasure. You know, I'm not speaking for them. This is just kind of my own outside perspective. Also, I'm not judging them. I either did or didn't enjoy the book in the same way they do. But, like I said, I have my own guilty pleasures. I read zombie books. I read the Star Wars Expanded Universe novels, which is basically licensed, published fan fiction that I paid for. You think that's like a great thing? I'm proud to show I read all these books. No, not really, but you know what? It's fine. So with all that out of the way, let's talk some guilty pleasure books, shall we?
Hey guys, Editing Zach here. I'm going to be popping in sporadically to make additional comments and or corrections. You'll have to forgive me. Not filming for 2 months has made me a tad rusty, so yeah.
So the first book on our list is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin, which has been a very fun book to see discussed because when it came out, was it last year or early this year? I don't remember. I don't keep track of these things. When it came out, you had people who really enjoy it, think it's a great book, they really like it. My friend Allie is one of these people. Then you have people that absolutely hated it. Cindy did a video on it. Rhiannon from Crescent Moon Reads did a video on it.
I do also want to quickly mention that my friend Knox included this in a video where she talked about cancel culture, problematic content, and this book. She also gave me a shout out in it, which I didn't realize until I watched it today, which makes me feel bad for missing it, so I'm sorry, Knox. I'm also going to link Jesse from Bow Ties and Books review. They did a review of this as well, and all four of those reviewers talked about the problematic aspects of this book, and for 3 of them, its own voices. problems where Jesse talks about some of the racial stuff, Rhiannon talks about some of the witch stuff, and Knox talks about the fat phobia stuff, and Cindy talks about a little bit of all of it, and is her usual meme-tastic self. So just know there's additional problematic content that I did not touch on, but are touched on in those videos. So if you want more details about that, I will let them talk about it, and I'm just going to go on with what I said in the video. So
then you had people in the middle, like my friend Rachel, who's the one I picked this book for, where she loves this book, thought it was a ton of fun, but she acknowledges, I think she said she thinks the book is trash, but we'll just say the book has problems. I'm trying to be nice about this. So where did I fall? I didn't like it. So if you don't know what Serpent and Dove is about, it is basically a force/coerce/marriage of convenience book /enemies to lovers book about a witch and a witch hunter. And the book kind of shows how they get together, why they get together, and kind of focuses on what happens next. Now, I don't really want to go super in-depth as to like what all happens in this book, because those other videos I mentioned, you know, they did their own videos, so you can go check those out. I don't really need to waste my time going super in-depth. What I do want to talk about is the plot structure and the stakes, and how I feel like those two things really hurt the book, and why it really led to me not enjoying it. Now, when I first heard this was an enemies to lovers book of a witch and a witch hunter, my first thought was it was going to be somewhere in the ballpark of Rear Window. If you've never seen it, it is one of Alfred Hitchcock's most famous, best films. And in it, a photographer who has a broken leg is sitting at home all day, and he sees his neighbor out the window, and he starts to have suspicion, that's what I'm looking for, of his neighbor, and thinks he might be doing something that's bad, might have done something quite illegal. Also in the movie, he has a girlfriend who he thinks is too good for him, even though she very clearly wants to stay in the relationship, and they're kind of bickering. He ends up telling the girlfriend about his suspicions, and they work together to solve the problem, find out what's going on, and try to handle it. Through the events of the film, through solving this problem, their relationship becomes better. They bond a little more. They work together and realize, hey, this could work. And by the end of it, they're in a happy relationship again. So I thought for Serpent and Dove, it would make sense where they would marry and they would be bickering, and then something would come up where there's a problem that we need someone who understands the witches, and we need a witch hunter who can easily go out and handle the problem. And I thought they would work together and kind of build this element of trust, and slowly that would help their relationship along until they really cared for each other while solving this big problem. It's not really what happens, it's kind of sort of. A better comparison, I think, is The Shawshank Redemption, which is my personal favorite movie of all time. In The Shawshank Redemption, you have a character who is locked up in prison for a crime he says he did not commit, which is the murder of his wife and her lover. The story starts out completely personal, nothing but personal stakes. He just wants out of prison for something that he insists he didn't do. Throughout the events of the story, he ends up getting involved in a manner of other things, corruption of this prison, murder, and a couple of other things that he doesn't do but is involved with and can expose the truth of. So through his personal story, he ends up involved in a bigger story, so there's more stakes that add to his personal journey of trying to get out of prison. This is what I think Serpent and Dove was trying to go for, this kind of small personal story that ends up with huge stakes. Didn't really pull it off. For one thing, the book spends pretty much the first 400 of 500 pages focusing on this relationship without really much happening. The male love interest, Reed, I don't really know why he's like agreeing to this relationship and what, like, he doesn't really have a need, that like empty thing that she can fulfill for him if he gets over what she is. And Lou doesn't really work for anything. She's not really actively trying to do anything but stay alive, which, yes, technically that's a goal. Yes, technically that's motivation. Yes, technically that's stakes. However, maintaining the status quo, just staying alive, to me has always been one of the least interesting types of stories and stakes and motivation you can have. It doesn't get me behind the character, especially when Lou purposefully goes out of her way to be annoying and to annoy a lot of the characters around her, some of which I liked a lot more, like Ansel. That was his name, Ansel. But at the 400-page mark, things happen, and there's, the falling out, the low point, which you have in pretty much every story and every romance story. And then the big world stakes kick in. And I don't know why Shelby Mahurin didn't spend more time peppering the setup throughout earlier in the book. And so it just kind of comes out of nowhere. And at this point, I had been so bored for so long that, I just couldn't care anymore. And the frustrating thing for me is, all the elements are there. It could have worked if it was just, moved around. This feels like the first draft of a book that could have been really great, which in my opinion is not. One extra quick example, because, I need to move on from this. There's an old flame of the male love interest that's introduced throughout the book. If we had this earlier, where before he meets Lou, the witch, where, he was looking over old letters, and it was clear, he needed someone to accept him and someone to love him, that I think would give us a lot more. It would make us feel for him a lot more and make us understand why he's accepting this person that clearly is, wrong for him, or is supposed to be wrong for him. But we don't really get that. It's kind of introduced later on when they're already bickering, and you're just kind of why are you yelling? Stop yelling. So yeah, obviously wasn't a fan, but because there were elements that I saw that could have worked, I gave this 2 stars. Also, do I get why it's a guilty pleasure? Yeah, because in my opinion, it's kind of bad. The pacing is not great. You really have to be huge into enemies to lovers to really stand this book. So, I mean, if that's your thing, that's your thing. But beyond that, I don't really see who else is going to really love this book. All right, on to book number 2. We have a guilty pleasure for Read with Cindy. So, fun fact, I was actually researching this book, and I had my first 2. And I was trying to look for a third one when I think Rachel asked on Twitter, what's everyone's guilty pleasure? And Cindy said, Scarlett from Marissa Meyer, which is the second book in the Lunar Chronicles. I'm going to be honest. Cindy, I don't get why this is a guilty pleasure. So if you somehow are on Booktube and don't know what the Lunar Chronicles is, I would be shocked. The Lunar Chronicles is a YA sci-fi retelling series of popular fairy tales that all tie together into a YA sci-fi plot. It's hard to explain, but once you get there and start reading it, it makes a lot of sense. This book, Scarlett, is a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood, and I think it's really good. I think it's a decently good retelling. I mean, you can definitely tell the elements of Little Red Riding Hood sewn throughout the story. I mean, the love interest's actual name is Wolf, which we're gonna come back to that in a second. But I think the story was really great. I think the characters are really great. I think the sci-fi elements are quite good throughout the whole series. And this, for me, was where the Lunar Chronicles really took off. Cinder, some people really love Cinder. I personally thought it was okay. It was very milquetoast. It was just a retelling of Cinderella. It didn't really, to me, add that much to the story, that much pizzazz. And I was never the biggest Cinderella fan anyway, so, it's just kind of there. But this book is really where it expands. We get better characters like Captain Thorn, who I will stand forever, despite the fact he is a dumbass. He's a very lovable dumbass. And Scarlett and Wolf, I think, are a lot better, and Cinder being around other characters, to me, makes her a lot more tolerable, because she was not a favorite of mine throughout any of the first 3 books. I still have to read Winter, but I've read the first 3, and Cinder has always been, my least favorite character. But yeah, I don't really get it. I think it's a good book. Do I know why it's guilty pleasure? Not really. I could have just texted Cindy and asked her this question, but I didn't. Why? I don't know. I think that the guilt must stem from one of 2 things. Number 1, the love interest is called Wolf. You say you love a character called Wolf, and I guess it kind of makes you sound like a furry. I'm just spitballing here. I'm not saying that, okay? I like Wolf as a character a lot, and, if he charms some ladies, then, that's fine. He's not actually a wolf, so, it doesn't make you a furry. But number 2, there's also the whole big argument about things meant for girls and society coming down on that. I don't really feel like that's my place to, talk about. Me being one of those, cis male penis having individuals. Not really my conversation to have. Me personally, I wasn't really raised that way, so I never really saw an issue with it. I mean, I will straight up tell people that, like, I've read the first 3 books in Lunar Chronicles and enjoyed 2/3 of them. What I'm trying to say is I'm not like other boys. Speaking of that, our final book of today is Jordan Harvey's Guilty Pleasure, and that is Blood Red Road by Moira Young. Now, being a fan of Jordan's channel, she has alluded to this book a lot, where she's talking about how she really likes the book, but she knows the book has problems, and it's kind of a flawed favorite, all of which screamed Guilty Pleasure. I actually kind of got the idea for this video because I was kind of interested to see what all the fuss was about, and like what she meant by all that. So I got it from the library and I read it. I enjoyed it. It was fine. Blood Red Road is a, I guess, post-apocalypse novel. I will give a asterisk. I don't know what word I'm looking for. I will give fair warning. Let's go with that. That there is not really a lot of explicit world building. You gotta kind of assume things and figure things out on your own. So if you like explicit world building, this book is probably going to drive you nuts.
Another thing that will potentially drive people nuts about this book is that the writing of this book is highly stylized. It's written phonetically to represent someone speaking with an accent, and there's no quotation marks, so some people will really like that. I personally did, because it reminded me a lot of Dolores Claiborne, which is a book I really like. Other people will hate it, but it is not a book full of typos like I've seen many reviews on Goodreads say. It's stylized and meant to be that way.
But anyway, Blood Red Road is about a set of twins that are born, and they grow up, and they're living in a place, and their dad's kind of a deadbeat, and the mom's dead, and they have a younger sister, and some bad men come, take the brother away, and it's about the other twin, Saba, trying to get her brother back. The plot and most of the characters is very reminiscent of older YA. It's good YA, it's enjoyable enough, but I mean, yeah, certainly stuff you would see in older young adult stuff. The flaws of this book, and the reason I totally understand the guilt factor for Jordan, is the main character, the love interest, and their relationship. You have this fairly good YA plot and set of characters contrasted against a couple and a love story that borders on like parody of older YA. It's really hard to explain. Saba, the main character, is basically a Mary Sue. She just is good at a lot of the things she does, but is also like a jackass to most people in the book. And she will not admit feelings for the love interest who she is clearly into. There's like no reason for her not to just own up to it. None. I don't get, like, everyone could see it clear as day. In fact, she has a hearthstone. It's set up earlier in the book that she has a necklace that gets warmer when you get near your heart's desire. And when she gets near this guy for the first time, it gets hot. And the book keeps reminding us that she has this necklace on, and it gets hot every time she's near Jack, which is the love interest's name. So we know for a fact she is into him, and she just will not. So, yeah, the main character in the love story, like I said, bordering on parody. It's like what people who complain about YA think all YA is like. That's like this main character in love story.
I forgot to say this at the start of this segment, but when Saba introduces herself to the reader, she literally introduces herself, I have brown hair, have brown eyes, and I'm extremely ugly. So, like I said, it's like a parody of older YA, what people who complain about YA think YA is like, and honestly, it was entertaining. In the relationship, I know I just kind of tore a new one in that part of the video, but it was entertaining to see just how long it could go on for, and how just like how many times it should have just moved on, where we should have just accepted that, you know, this romance was happening, and it went for the longest time where just every time she keeps shooting him down, no, I'm totally not interested. Like, there's an aspect of the world that tells us that you are, even if we didn't notice the obvious. So it was entertaining, I promise. Well, it was entertaining for me.
But like I said, everything else in the book is like enjoyable post-apocalypse adventure action YA with a cage fighting subplot. Yes, it happens. So, I mean, like I said, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. It's not like the height of literature or anything. It's not like a must-read older YA book. But, you know, if you see it at the library and you're looking for something just kind of fun and easy to read, I'd say go for it. I will warn you that Jordan has told me that the sequels kind of suck ass. So, just stop. The book comes to a relatively good stopping point where, like, there's a little bit of loose ends where, like, you can tell what, you know, the sequels were going to happen, but it's not bad enough to where you have to read the sequel because it's on a cliffhanger. It's nothing like that. So, yeah, that was my experience reading 3 Booktube guilty pleasures. I did find it really interesting that, like, I kind of got the spread where I got a book I didn't like, a book that I liked that I thought wasn't really guilty pleasure, and then a book I liked that was a guilty pleasure. It's kind of like the best spread you can ask for, I guess, in this scenario, but it was a fun experiment. However, we're not done with the series. Oh no. I have decided to move on to 2 of the most popular and widespread guilty pleasures, and I'll be reading them for the next video, and I don't know if this is going to be a series or just a pair of videos, so I guess we'll find out. But I think for that video, I'm going to do a reading vlog to talk about reading through those books. I'm not going to say what they are now, but if you know Booktube, I mean, I think you can figure out, we'll say, a universe and a certain author that frequently come up on Booktube, and a lot of people say is not really that great, but they love it anyway. You can come to your own conclusions, make your own predictions, unless you're one of the people I've already told. Go for it. But anyway, that's the end of this video, this little experiment, secret TBR that was not that secret because I told a lot of people along the way. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry I was gone for so long. Hopefully things will be back to normal from here on out. I'm going back to work in a week and a half, so it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But hopefully things will be consistent from here on out. No promises, but I'm going to try. In the meantime, if you like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe if you feel so inclined, and I will see you next time.